And on with the story. Okay. It was the 7th day of the following week. Danny had went to Frendale at the beginning of the week. I was cleaning the floor in the kitchen when I heard the door open and close. Then Danny stood in the sitting room looking to me. "Why do you have a Dinah if you allow her not to do her duty?" he asked with a chuckle. I looked up to him and laughed. "My Dinah, as you call her, is out with Tony at the moment, and besides, I like cleaning," I said and stood. Moved to the sink and washed my hands, then over to him. Placing my arms about him, I kissed his lips. "I am glad you're back. I worry when you leave like that," I told him. "Get cleaned up. I have something I want to show you," he said. "Really? What is it?" I asked. "Just get cleaned up, and you will see." He laughed, kissing me again and letting me out of his embrace. I smirked and moved from him, going into my room. After getting cleaned up, I moved back into the sitting room, and Danny was cleaning the kitchen. He was placing the things away I had out. "I have a Dinah to do that," I smirked to him. "Yes, well, she is out on a date." He laughed and turned around. "Ready to go?" he asked. "Where are we going?" I asked, as the only thing he said was that he had something to show me. "Something," he said, and took me by the shoulder and led me out the door and onto a coach. I moved with him and saw John and Donald. I stepped into the coach, and we rode for about 20 minutes. When we came to the other side of the kingdom, where the large estates of the nobles were located, we came up on a large gate. As we came closer to the gate, it opened, and we rode through. I looked around in awe. It was beautiful. The trees were in bloom. The flowers were breathtaking. I looked to Danny and then back to the area we rode through. Soon we came up on a large cottage. Actually, I believe it was a small palace. It was white and gold, and I saw people working in the yard and even a few children playing. "Danny, where are we?" I asked. "Like what you see?" he asked. "It is beautiful. Who lives here?" I asked him. "You do if you want," he said with a smile. I blinked and looked at the surroundings, then back at him. "Danny, if I want to or not, I could not afford the upkeep on this place," I said to him, and he started laughing. "Then 'tis a damn good thing I own it," he replied. "I thought you lived in the Palace of Devar," I replied, as he was of the Sultan Circle, and that is where I thought they all lived. "I do, Patsy. However, I have my own estate as well." The coach came to a halt, and Danny stepped out, offering me his hand. I took it and stepped out of the coach. As we started to talk and walk to the house, I noticed the people working had on silver and platinum collars. They ceased what they were doing and heeled, then laid forward. "Rise and continue as you were," Danny then said, and they all stood and continued to work. As he led me into the cottage, it was white and gold, all well and breathtaking. We walked into a large room, and again the Thorntons about showed respect, and he had to instruct them to continue. "They do that every time they see you?" I asked. He laughed. "No, just in greetings, as I am usually not here." He continued to show me around the cottage. It had 3 stories and was large. The first floor had a sitting room, dining area, and a music room, 2 offices or studies, a kitchen, and 2 holding rooms, which were actually empty rooms. The second floor had 8 bedrooms, and the third floor had 12 small rooms, which he told me was for the Thorntons. We stood in the sitting room as he lay. We stood in the sitting room as he had shown me about the cottage. So how about it? Take care of the place for me? He asked. Danny, what of my compartment? I asked him. You can keep it as well. Let me move you in here. I would feel safer while I was away, knowing you are here and not in the center of the kingdom, he said, concerned. All right, Danny, as you wish, I said, and I started to cry. I could not believe all that was happening to me. Tony, Brian, and Sandy will bring your things, darling. Welcome to your new home, he grinned. I stood there with a smirk on my face looking to him. He had this all planned out. Danny Lee, are you ever going to consult me before making plans for my life? I said, not sure if I was or if I should be upset with him or not. Well, if you want, however, I like surprising you more than anything, he said and leaned to kiss me. I returned his kiss. You're unbelievable, you know that, I said to him. I know you are my everything, and I love you more than life itself, Patsy Lee, he said with a charming and adorable smile on his face. I love you, and you never cease to surprise me, I replied back. It was not much after we arrived that Sandy, Brian, and Tony walked in. Sandy moved over to me and heeled. I looked to Tony and Brian. So do we start packing, or did she call you all kinds of bad names? Tony asked with a laugh. No, she did not call me all kinds of bad names, and yes, you can start packing, Danny informed them. Just pack our personal items and my music. Sandy, leave a few changes of clothing there. For sometimes we may stay in the square, I told her. She smiled. Yes, my mistress. Sandy, one of the studies is Patsy's. Also, the music room is Patsy's also. I actually just put that in, for I knew you had one in your compartment, Danny said. I turned to him. Prince Roaming, you are so sure of yourself, I told him. Not really, just wishful thinking. Besides, Patsy, I am determined to make you as happy as I possibly can. I will give you anything you want as long as it is in my means to do so, he said and placed his arms about me. I placed my arms about him and actually could not believe all that was happening. It was like a fantasy, a fairy tale, come true. The back of the cottage was a beautiful rose garden with a patio in the center, where there was tables and a play area. I was sitting out in the garden thinking about all that had happened. It was a couple days after I had gotten settled into the cottage. My mind started to drift as I thought of what my father had done, and then my sister Jolene. I could not help yet to think of where she was and how she was being treated. I started to cry, as I really wanted to know. I just had no idea how to begin to look for her. I was laying back in the chair with my eyes closed when I felt Danny's hand on my shoulder. I could sense it was him. I placed my hand on his. Darling, what is wrong? He asked. It is nothing really. Just thinking of the past, I told him. About James and Candace, he asked me. I shook my head. No, my father and younger sister, I replied. Younger sister? Where is she? He asked me as he raised me to my feet and sat down, placing me on his lap. I leaned against his shoulder. I do not know. After Father sewed us, we were separated. She was only in 9th level. I do not think I would even recognize her, I said and started to cry. I hate my father, I then said, and he rubbed my back and held me close to him. When your father sewed you and your sister, did he take you to a Viking lodge? He asked. I pulled back from him and looked to him. Yes, the lodge and try. Why? I asked as I wanted to know why he asked the question. Because all lodges have to keep records of sales and purchases, he explained to me. I can just contact the lodge and they would know who bought her. I asked. It is not that easy or simple, as your father has rights to remain anonymous, and so does the one that bought her. What was her name? He asked. Jolene Karen Sanders, I told him. I will see what I can do. Now no more tears and give me a smile, he said sweetly. Hearing he could find my sister, I smiled brightly and kissed his lips and hugged him. Danny, I love you, I told him. Thank you so much. Do not start thanking me now. All I can do is see where she went after the lodge. Please do not get your hopes up for them to be shattered, Patsy. She could be anywhere in the garden, he said, very serious, and I nodded. However, as you say, it is a start, I smiled. That it is. He kissed me and stood me to my feet. Brian is waiting to take you to the tavern. I will see you tonight. He kissed me, and I walked inside with him. Danny had contacted the Viking Lodge and found out that Jolene was Lily branded and sold on the open block. The buyer was a man from the village of Paris. Unfortunately, the man lost all his property in a gambling game, so he hit a dead end to where she is. I had thanked Danny for trying. I knew it was not going to be that easy or good to be true. I continued to work in the tavern. Danny would stay with me most nights when he was in the kingdom. He had a tour coming up, and I hated the tours, for he would be gone practically a year's cycle. Chapter 16. As usual, all I did was work and go home. We were staying at the compartment, for I hated being at the cottage without Danny. Sandy was spending more and more time with Tony. I half expected Tony to ask to buy her. However, he never did, nor did she mention it to me. It had been a long 6 months. I knew Danny would be returning any day now. This caused me to be overly happy. Lord, how I had missed him. When he did return, I was on stage singing. When I saw him come in, and would you know it, I forgot the rest of the words of the song. Well, now, anyone know the words of the song I was singing? I asked with a laugh, and the band ceased the music. Danny Lee is back, someone yelled out, and I started to laugh. I do not think those words are in that song, I laughed. He came up beside me and took one of the mics. The crowd started to clap and yell. Greetings. I did not know how much of an effect I actually had on her. How about I assist her in singing another song for all you good people? He called out and the audience cheered. He turned to me. I traveled through the rain. I traveled through the snow. I traveled through Odin's storms just to get back to you. He sung and the band started to play. I waited through the days, I waited through the nights, I waited even months for you to come home to me. I then sung. Now that we're together, our lives are complete. You and me, this is how it should be. We both sang and continued with the song. After the song was over, he kissed me and picked me up. I lost my place. I am stealing Patsy Lee, he said, and they laughed as he carried me off the stage and down to the table, kissing me. I missed you, I told him. Yes, and I you. So what have you been up to? He asked. Working, 9 to 12, passing. I told him. 9 passing of the first son or the second, he asked. The first. With you not here. Okay, I don't know what happened, but my computer just skipped. And now I have to find the place. The first. With you not here, it is boring, and no one at the cottage will let me do anything, I informed him. Yes, and according to those of the cottage, you and Sandy have not been there, he challenged. Without you there, I do not like it, I confessed. He smiled. The concert is tonight, so I will see you there, he told me. How long are you home for? I asked. Right now, we do not know. Depends on Father. We have not another tour planned for now, he said. Then see you there. I am working. And I was rudely carried off the stage. I laughed. Yeah, well, you forgot the words to sing to that song. He laughed, and I pushed him and laughed, moving back on the stage. It was around 5 passing. The concert was to start at 6, and I was getting ready to go. Get ready when Tony came over to me. Care if I take Sandy to the Royal concert? He asked. No, not at all. You can take her anywhere you want, I laughed. Good, then we will see you there, he said, and I smiled. I left and went to my compartment, getting cleaned up, and then to the concert hall. As I always did, I moved to the side of the stage. As they started to perform, I danced and listened to them. As Danny was announced, he slid out as he always did and grabbed the mic. Usually, he went into a song. However, this day he did not. He grabbed the mic and started to talk. Greetings, all you good people. You know, I sing solo all the time. I do not want to sing solo tonight. Any suggestions on who could sing with me? He called to those in the audience. Patsy, I heard someone yell. Patsy Lee, where is she? I heard another yell out. Then a spotlight came on me, and I felt my face getting red. She's standing solo over there. He waved the mic my way. I bet if you all call her name, we can get her on this stage, and I would not have to sing solo and sing all alone, he said, and I laughed as the audience started to chant my name. I moved to the stairs and walked up on stage and looked to him. One of these days you are going to let me in on your shenanigans, I told him. That is not as much fun, my darling. He laughed, and the music started to play, and we started to sing. For the passing of the full year cycle, every concert he had me on stage with him, it became a routine of ours. He would ask who the audience wanted to hear sing with him, and they all called out Patsy Lee, and I would go up on stage. It was after one of the concerts that we all were standing backstage, and Danny placed his arm about me and kissed my lips. I need to run. Actually, we all need to run. I want you to meet me at Valhalla at 9 passing in the morning. He told me. Danny, I have to be at the tavern at 9 passing, I told him. No, I want you at Valhalla. Brian will bring you, and I will speak with Tony. He will have to sing for the tavern tomorrow. He laughed. I laughed as I could see Tony singing, which he was a very good singer, just not at his own tavern. All right, Danny, I take it you are not coming to the cottage? I asked. No, I have to be at Devar tonight. See you at Valhalla? He said and kissed me again and took out. I could not yet to wonder what Prince Daniel was up to now. I went to the cottage and got ready for bed. I had never been to Valhalla, and that was the palace of the high priest. I was a little uneasy about going. However, Danny wanted me to meet him there, so I would. The next morning, I met Brian outside the cottage, and he took me to Valhalla. As we rode up on the front of the palace, I sat stunned in the carriage. I could not believe I was going into this palace. Patsy, are you all right? Brian asked. Yeah, I am fine. What does he want me here for? I asked him. I have no idea. I was told to bring you is all, he replied. I had never seen the high priest. Actually, I did hope it was not, so I could meet the family. I was not ready for this. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the carriage and looked to Brian. You are coming with me, right? I said back to him. No, that was not my orders. My orders were to bring you here, he told me. I looked to him in dismay. Where am I to meet him? I asked. I guess his study, I do not know. He chuckled, and I could have slapped him. I took a deep breath and started up the walkway. As I came to the double doors, they were opened by the guardsmen. And I walked in. The floor was of green marble, and the walls were white. It was beautiful. I felt lost and so much out of place. I heard 2 small voices, and then saw a ball go rolling across the floor. Get it, I heard one call. You rolled it, I heard another. Cease this, I am not going to play with you, I heard another voice. That last voice was of a young girl. Then I saw 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, that looked a lot like one of the boys. They all ceased and looked to the guard, then to me. What am I doing here? I said to myself, when the young boy that looked like the young girl stood before me. You looks lost, he said with a charming smile. That I would be, I told him, returning his smile. What you looking for? And I might help, could help. He then said, It is more like who I am looking for, I replied, as I watched the other 2 children toss the ball back and forth to one another. I am looking for Prince Daniel Humberg. He asked me to meet him here. I am not sure where here is, as this is a large palace. I half laughed, looking around, feeling right out of place. That be me brother. I be Emmett. You gots to be Patsy Lee, right? He asked, smiling. Right, that would be me, I said, nodding my head. Danny is right. You sure are pretty, he said, and I could not help yet to blush and laugh. Are you not the little charmer? I said. He took me by the hand. Yup, he said, all sure of himself, and then started to pull me down the hall. I had no choice yet to go with him. "Be back. Gots to take pretty lady to Danny," I heard him yell to the other two children. "Get lost, I make out with your sister," the other young boy said, and I laughed. "Her will bust you nose," Emmett called back, then looked up to me as he started to have me climb up a flight of stairs. "That's being my best friend Law and my sister Emmy," he told me as we moved up the stairs. Then we turned on the landing and moved up more stairs, then more stairs. "Would it have been faster to take a level transporter?" I asked as I continued up the stairs. "Yep, not as much fun," he informed me. I laughed and continued on up the stairs. I was never so glad to see them come to an end. I went with him to a recording room. As the guard opened the door and Emmett pulled me inside, he started to call out, "Oh, Danny! Hey, Danny! I found a lost pretty lady! Danny!" I laughed listening to him as Danny came out of one of the side rooms. "Hey, Squirt," he said, tickling Emmett's stomach, and he slapped his hand away. "No! Look, I found the pretty lady you no shut up about," Emmett told him, and I laughed even more and smiled to Danny. "I see you did," Danny said, and came over to me kissing me. "He's adorable," I told Danny. "He thinks he is," he said to me, and then turned to Emmett, acting as if he was going to grab him. "You go find somewhere else to haunt before I tickle all the laughter out of you," he said playfully, and Emmett turned around and took off running out of the room. "You gots to catch me first," he yelled back, and I laughed. "What level is he in?" I asked Danny. "He is in 9th level and thinks he has it going on." He laughed. I smiled and laughed, then looked to him. "Now what am I doing here?" I asked him, looking around at the studio. "We, as in you and me, are going to make a disc. I am going to make you national," he said, and I blinked. "You are going to do what?" I asked, not really believing what he just said, as I had no choice yet to follow him into one of the glass rooms I found out was a sound booth. That day we made a full disc of 15 songs, 5 of mine, then 5 of his, then 5 together. The disc was called Patsy Lee and Danny Lee, Romance of the Star. Chapter 17. It had been about 2 months since we made the disc. I was on stage at the tavern when I saw Danny and Mike walk in and over to the corner table. Not soon as they came in, I saw Tony and Brian join them. I sung about 3 more songs, then left the stage for a break. I moved over to the table, and Danny stood, placing his arms about me, as the rest of them stood as well. Sandy came over and handed me my drink. "Guess it is time to find another singer. You going to assist me?" Tony asked me. I was shocked. Why was he going to find another singer? What had I done wrong? "Tony, what are you talking about?" I asked. "Danny, she does not know," Tony asked, looking from me to Danny. I now looked to Tony, then Danny, and then Mike. "Do not look at me. I did nothing," Mike said in his defense. "Daniel Humberg, what is it I do not know?" I asked him. By this time, I was used to him doing things for me before telling me about it. "No, she does not," he said, laughing. As the look on my face, I am sure he thought he was in trouble. Patsy, we have arranged a tour. And well, it is to promote the Romance of the Star. So in order to promote the disc, you will have to go," he said, looking guilty to me, and I grabbed him and hugged him and started kissing him. I was going on tour. Me. I could not believe it. I pulled back and looked at him. "Are you serious? You are taking me on tour?" I said, as I still could not believe what I was hearing. "I told you, Patsy, Lee, I would make you national." He smiled. "Mad at me?" he asked. "Mad at you?" "No, more like mad over you," I said, and again grabbed him and started to kiss him. "I think she likes the idea," Tony said, as I looked to him and watched him place his arms around Sandy. I looked to Sandy and Danny, then Tony. "Sandy is coming with me, right? I cannot leave her behind. Or if I must, can Tony keep her for me?" I asked, as I did not want to leave her at the cottage alone, and she could not remain in the compound without me getting a permit for her to be left alone. "Well, I will agree to keep her. I would not pass that chance up in 1,000 millenniums. However, now that you know everything, I am returning to the group, and Carson is going to take the tavern back. So I am coming also." Tony laughed. "That answers that," I said. And then I told Sandy, and she laughed. I looked to her. "All right, little Dinah, friend of mine, how long have you known?" I asked her. "Only for a couple days, my mistress. Master made me promise not to say a word. He said if and I did, I would be sleeping in the field." She laughed. I looked to Danny, and smiled, however, bit the inside of my cheek some. "Why am I the last to know about anything?" I asked with a frustrating laugh. "Because that look you get and give me is worth all of it," Danny said, and kissed me. I shoved him playfully back. "One of these days, you're going to really lose on your shenanigans," I told him. That next day, we took out of the kingdom. We were going to Ferndale. It took about 6 hours to travel to Ferndale. When we arrived, we all went to the high priest's cottage. I found out there was a high priest cottage in every kingdom and every village. It would be the next day that we would perform, then head out again. When we went to the hall and behind stage, the miracles were playing. Then Alex went on and started to sing. I waited backstage, talking about somebody nervous I was. Lorelai came over too. She was Mike's wife and co-singer. She placed her arm about my shoulders. "You are more scared than I was when I first was brought up on this stage, and honey, this is not the first you have been on." She smiled to me. "True. However, Laura, in Atlantis, they already knew me. These people do not." "What if they do not like me?" I asked. "How could they not like you? You sing like an angel." "One that is too good for the roaming gigolo." She laughed. "I love that roaming gigolo." I said, "Yes, and you put an end to his roaming. Now my song is no good." She laughed. I smiled. "It is a funny song. Poor Danny." I laughed, and then Danny came up and kissed Laura. Or Mike came up and kissed Laura. "Come on, baby. We're on. Patsy, you will be and do great," he said, and off they went. Danny came up behind me and kissed my neck. "I will go out, as I always do, and speak to them. Then you come out. You will know when," he told me. "Danny, what if they don't like me?" I asked. What do you mean? They love you, he said. Danny, that is in Atlantis. There I sung at the tavern. They all knew me. These people here do not know me, I told him, worried. Silly darling, our disc sold over 525,000 copies. That was just in the Three Kingdoms. Also, that is just the record of Atlantis shop. I have no idea what it sold in others. You have nothing to worry about, he said, trying to reassure me. Yes, however, your name is on that disc. I would have bought it just because it had Drew on it. Danny Lee, we heard, and he kissed me and took off running out on the stage. I was so nervous. I watched as he slid across the floor. He took the mic and started to sing a song. From the disc, the audience started to cheer, as they do in Atlantis. Greetings, welcome, it is good to be in, he said and paused. Where are we again? He asked. Everyone laughed. Oh well, I will remember it someday. Good people of Frandul, let me hear a round of hands of those that have the disc, Romance of the Star, he said, and a lot started to clap and cheer. So I believe a lot of you do. Tell me, what you think of the female vocalist on that disc? Do you want to hear her sing in person? Let me hear the round of hands if you do, he said, and again they started to clap and cheer. Little he knew he was just making me more nervous. Wonderful. In Atlantis, they get her on stage by calling her name. She is a little shy, and she is scared of all of you. So how about seeing if you can get her out here, and we will sing Lover Tell Me Do, he called, and those people sounded like the ones in Atlantis, calling my name, or so, chanting it. Danny turned back, and I looked to him. See, they love you. Come join me, Patsy Lee. Darling, be mine, he said, and I walked out on stage, and the people cheered, and the band started to play, and we started to sing. That night was great. Once I started to sing, I forgot all about being nervous and just sung my heart out with Danny. I was great. It was great. And over all too soon. We left Frandel the next morning and started out to Paris. That would take us a little longer. The first night we stayed at the Circle Camp. I was sitting in the tent when Danny came in and laid down, placing his head on my lap, looking up at me. First time ever been camping, darling? He asked. First time I have ever been out of the kingdom of Atlantis in my life, I said to him. You all right? He asked. I am fine, I said, placing my hand in his hair and moving it around, actually playing in his hair when a head came into the tent, and I looked up to Sandy. Look, 'tis a head, Danny called out and pointed, and I laughed. Yes, wonder where the body is, I replied, and Sandy moved into the tent and healed. What is it? I asked her. My mistress, where am I to sleep? She asked. In the tent with the others, I suppose. I looked to Danny. Where is she to sleep? I asked. Wherever you like, besides in here, he said with a laugh. I got this bad thought, and I knew it was against decree, or thought it was. Can she remain with Tony, or is it against decree? As I know she is not of his house, or be in his bedroom overnight. I asked, and Sandy looked all hopeful. I see no harm in it. As we are together and we are in a camp, the decrees state a gold-collar courtesan owned by a female may not remain in the chambers overnight with a male unless coin be given and of a use bordello. It does not have anything about camps, so go for it, he said. Sandy, you will sleep with Tony, I said. Thank you, she said, and stood, and off she went out of the tent. She loves Tony, I said, more to myself, feeling regretful for her. Tony loves her, Danny replied. I looked to him. I knew he thought a lot of her, I said. Only thing that keeps him from owning her is you. He knows you think a lot of her and does not want to take her from you, he told me. I sat there thinking of them. I have who I want. Why should she not have who she wants? If I was to give her to Tony, would he accept her? I asked. I would say with open arms, what are you thinking, my darling? He asked. I know we are breaking decree by allowing them to remain together. You can get around it, for you are an executive prince, and no one is here that will call either of us on it. However, back at the cottage, they would not be permitted as much, and I do not want her to be alone. I think I will talk to her tomorrow, I told him. Want me to tell Tony? He asked. No. He kept a lot from me. Paybacks, Danny Lee. Do not you say a word to him, I said. Yes, ma'am. He laughed. My darling, he added. I continued to play in his hair. I then wondered how he got to be where he is. Danny, how did you go from being an executive Prince Daniel Humbergs to plain Danny Lee? I asked, and he rolled off my lap and to one side, propping himself up on his elbow. Well, it started when I was in 18th level. There was a sound conductor that was being investigated for extortion. It seemed he was taking the entertainers that were trying to go national and selling them contracts that he knew for sure they could not afford. Then after making 5 or 6 discs, and if they sold and hit the tops, he would insist they pay the contract in full. If they could not, he would collar them for owner debt. After collaring them, they lose all rights to any and all commissions of the disc, he said, and I listened to what he was saying. As he continued, Scott thought that perhaps I could go with Mike and act as if I was an amateur and trying to go national. At first, Father was totally against it, for I was not out of classes. However, Mike said it would work, and really I had little to no say in it. He laughed. So did you sing before that? I asked him. No. I played around at the classes, dances. However, nothing serious. I sung Mike's songs and Alex's. However, Father would not agree to it unless I was not recognized. So the first performance I put on was in Atlantis at the youth center. Lorelei had placed makeup on me, slicked my hair back, and had the silk leathers made, and they doddled me up. The sliding across the stage and all was actually her ideal. We went to see if anyone would recognize me, as that was our home, and everyone knew me. When I came sliding onto the stage, the crowd started clapping. As I grabbed the mic and started to sing, they took to me like a fish to water. Mike asked those of the kingdom who I was, and not a one could come up with my name. She then announced me as Danny Lee. The crowd actually never thought anything of it. I suppose the next concert at home, I went out on stage without the makeup and started to sing. They liked me. However, I moved back on stage and got in the disguise, and Alex announced Danny Lee. They went crazy. So Father, seeing that the people did not know me from Danny Lee, agreed that we could do it. It did work. The conductor sold me a contract for 2 diamonds. Said I could pay him with the first sale of the disc. I made 3 discs, and they really did not sell, as no one knew who I was. Then after the first concert, the disc sold. Now the commission for the disc I would not receive for 3 weeks after purchase, and besides, it was only a silver per disc. So do the math. I would not be able to pay the contract off, and that is what he was insisting. So he ordered me to pay or submit. As he did that, Mike and Scott and Alex were there to collect him, as I offered him the diamonds and smirked, as I then looked to Mike and bowed as they entered, as if I knew them not. He got busted, and I went back to classes. However, every show Mike and the Thunders or Alexander and the Miracles put on, the audience looked for me and were asking for me. So Mike talked to Dad into allowing me to tour with them, and that is how this all started. Also, it is a good front for when we have to investigate others in the other kingdoms and villages, he explained. So are you on an investigation now? I had asked. No, my darling. We are promoting the disc, as I told you. Now, if something comes up, that could change, he said honestly. I smiled. Your people made you. I said, yes, and some still do not know that I'm Danny Lee. Oh, and some do not know that Danny Lee is Prince Humberg. They know I travel with Mike and them. They even wrote a thing in the Chronicles that Daniel Humberg picks up women for Danny Lee, he said, laughing. Now that is funny. Wonder where they got that idea. I smirked. Yes, do wonder. He laughed and rolled back over to me and pulled me down on him, and then I found myself under him, and oh, so much at his mercy. Okay, we're going to end this here.